Coming up next on All About Android, it's me, Jason Howell, my co-host Ron Richards, and our guest David Ruddock from Esper.io. We talk all about what Esper actually is, and really it's all about talking about the Android devices that are hiding underneath the woodwork of the world. Also, Android distribution numbers, which we haven't had in a really long time. What the Wear OS numbers surge actually means for the platform, or does it mean more for Samsung's Galaxy Watch 4? Pixel 6a leaks. We have Google hacking kind of iMessage compatibility into Android messages. We talk about our love of the At a Glance widget, plus your email and a whole lot more next on All About Android.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of All About Android is brought to you by BetterHelp. Join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/Android. And by Userway.org. Userway ensures your website is accessible, ADA compliant, and helps your business avoid accessibility-related lawsuits. The perfect way to showcase your brand's commitment to millions of people with disabilities. It's not only the right thing to do, it's also the law. So go to userway.org/twit for 30% off Userway's AI-powered accessibility solution. Hello and welcome to All About Android. This is episode 552, recorded on Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. Your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Jason Howell.
And I'm Ron Richards.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back,
Hello,
Sir Ron.
So for our audience who listens to the podcast or the video ones or whatever, you want to, if you can, on Tuesday nights around 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, you want to tune in, because we chat before we do the show. And also, if you're a Twit Club member, sometimes you get some of that stuff. Great chat about Dune before the show started tonight. So fun times.
And no spoilers.
No spoilers.
Zero spoilers. Never. So, we're a little bit behind the times. Everybody already had these like Dune chats like 3 or 4 weeks ago. We finally got around to it here, but we
get there. We got there. So
we got there eventually. Joining us, returning to the show, but returning with a twist, is David Ruddock, no longer of Android Police. No, David Ruddock, editor-in-chief at Esper.io. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be back on.
Yeah. It's great to get you back. When I first saw your news, first of all, congratulations on the move. It's awesome. You were at Android Police. You left your mark on Android Police. You were there as long as you were in such an important role. And, it's one of the publications that we reference probably most on this show. So love what you did over there. When I saw on Twitter your announcement that you were leaving Android Police and then eventually going to Esper.io, I was like, oh no, we can never have David on our podcast again. What are we going to do? And then I reached out to you and you said, oh, heck no, I'm happy to come back. So I'm so happy to know that you can still be our podcast guest.
Yeah, it's awesome. And honestly, I'm still in the world of Android. So, it all works. Yep. It's fine.
Good. Well, why don't we, first of all, Burke, I think last week we robbed you of your opportunity to play the news bumper.
I wouldn't say.
We stole it from you.
I think we had a nice sojourn of not having to put everyone through that. So,
but this week we're giving him the floor. So it's time for the news, Burke. With a deep sigh that follows.
Yeah, hold on a second.
See, I'm telling you.
This is what we get.
No, it gets better, I swear.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Does it though?
I'm not so sure.
And this week I'm going to continue the tradition of having no Android news.
Okay, then. That's fine. That's fine. It's okay. You've got a lot on your plate. It's okay. Next week you'll be more prepared. We welcome you no matter whether you do the news bumper or not, Burke. It's cool. But I thought at the top of this news block we could talk with you a little bit about what you're doing, David, because I was unfamiliar really with Esper prior to you moving over. And then I've noticed a whole bunch of other familiar faces moving over. So thought before we kind of get into some of the Android news, kind of chat a little bit about what Esper is, what is DevOps? Like, explain this for people who aren't familiar with what you guys do at Esper.
Yeah. And I have been thinking about this a lot today because it's something I have to do a lot, which is explain what we do to people that really have no frame of reference, right? It's a really weird problem and a totally new one to me. So the way I think I'm going to do it is I say we make things for the world of unseen Android devices, the Android devices that are out there, but you probably aren't ever really thinking about. And probably one of the best examples is imagine you're going to an airport, which is a scary experience in and of itself today. I do it a lot. It is still terrifying. And imagine every computer or piece of signage that has some kind of interactive level or layer built into it that you interact with. You walk into the airport, you see the sign saying like where your terminal is, like which line you go to. You walk up to the check-in counter. There's a computer where you can check your bag, or whatever, or print out your boarding pass. You walk up to the gate agent. There's a computer they're using. You go to security. There's a TSA person there. They have a computer of some kind. You go through security. There's an X-ray machine that outputs a display to a display somewhere. That the agent that is looking at your bag going through the machine is looking at. You go to a restaurant in the airport. There's a tablet in front of the restaurant that lets you join the wait list to get a seat. You go inside the restaurant, there's a tablet maybe lets you order. There is a handheld device the person who bills you brings to you and says this is your bill, and you can tap your credit card or your phone against it to pay automatically. You go to the gate, there's a machine that scans your ticket. That's all of these computers are what we call dedicated use devices, and they're all running some kind of operating system. Most of them are probably running Windows in this example. Windows is very successful in airports, but they could be running Linux and they could be running Android. If we keep going on that journey to like you're on the airplane and you have a seat back entertainment kind of tablet screen, that is almost certainly running Android. Actually.
Yes, I've seen that. I've totally seen that.
Yeah. And so these are all kind of devices like that. And so that is what I call the unseen world of Android. And so there are tons and tons of devices out there, either for point of sale and retail, like a kind of a virtual cash register situation, or like a giant kiosk, like where you can order food at a fast food restaurant or something. All of these things need software. And increasingly companies are looking at Android, or really the Android open source project, and saying, hey, that's a fully baked OS. We don't have to build it, and we can power our products with that operating system. What Esper does is we make a version of the Android operating system, I should say, based on the Android open source project. We make an operating system that adds a lot of functionality for these kinds of devices that's really useful, like making sure it's really impossible for them to leave a single app that they're running all the time, or limiting their access to the internet, or limiting functionality like NFC. So all of this kind of stuff that you would not think about in a consumer smartphone or tablet, or even the generic computer or generic use computer, we would call it, like something you'd see in a doctor's office, where the device is just doing one thing all day, every day, and it needs to do that all the time and be very reliable. So we build an OS to power them, and then we build tools to manage them, deploy software to them, and do that at scale, which is the hard part. The hard part is you are a fast food restaurant and you have, 5,000 stores in the United States. You have 3 tablets in each of those stores. How do you deploy software to all of them? That sounds like an easy problem for a smartphone. It's a very hard problem in the world of enterprise devices, and it's not easily solved for. So that's what we're doing. And then we're introducing the power of automation, which is where DevOps comes in. And DevOps is really just, the way to think of it is, in a business that is, has a product, some kind of hardware product that runs an application. Let's say you're Square, for example, and you make those card readers you always see in stores, right? So Square has a team that makes the app, right? And Square also has a team that's responsible for the hardware piece there. So Square probably is using DevOps internally to make sure the development team who is making that app is working with the operations team who actually deploy that app to those devices, and making sure that happens as smoothly as possible. Now, that's a proprietary thing, though. That is something Square's built, or Amazon has built for their Fire tablets, or Microsoft has built for some of its products. What we're doing is providing a platform that anybody can buy and use to apply those principles to Android device fleets. And that is, a huge part of digital transformation and more computers in restaurants, more computers in retail, and all of the challenges that come in there. So that's really what we're doing. I know it's nebulous, but it's taken me a long time to really wrap my head around it myself. And the reason we work is like we save companies money. We just make doing business more efficient.
Yeah, sorry, Ron, go.
I was going to say the point that you made about all the devices that are out in the world that are running Android that you probably don't know are running Android because you take them for granted because it is such a open platform and ability to be customized for things like kiosks and display boards and things like that. And knowing what I know about DevOps just in general for standard internet applications and things like that, the idea of someone running DevOps for those kind of devices is kind of genius. So I'm really impressed. This is very cool.
I'm glad it sounds good.
Yeah.
You made it sound good. No, it's really important. I mean, we've been doing this show for 10, 11-ish years now. And I remember from the early days of doing this show, finding importance in this show representing not only the things that we've come to really identify Android for, which is like 90 to 95% of what we talk about, smartphones, tablets, all this, Kindle devices, devices that belong to Google and work in the Google ecosystem, devices that don't. But that's the thing. That's the crazy thing and awesome thing about Android is it's so many places that you have absolutely no idea. It's in your Oculus Quest VR headset. It's in that robot that Amazon, announced a couple of months ago. Android is tucked away and hidden in so many places. And we actually have a story that's going to come up after this that it kind of ties into because, we start talking about like distribution numbers and how widely spread is Android. And we only have the numbers that are reported really based on devices that actually check into Google's ecosystem for the most part. That's not even counting I don't know how many millions upon millions of devices that are out there just running.
Hundreds of millions.
I mean, crazy amounts, possibly more of those devices than the smartphones. I honestly, I don't know. I don't know where
eventually,
to take that,
probably that will be the case. Actually, there will be more of those devices than there are smartphones. Not there yet, but we will get there, I think.
I agree.
That's super impressive. And I also want to point out, this is not just, I had not paid attention to Esper primarily because of you. It's you and the effect of the fact that a whole bunch of other superstars, I would say, have moved over. Michal Rahman, who's been a frequent guest on this show from XDA, he's now at Esper. Cameron Summerson, another friend of the show, who's been on a number of times, now at Esper. I don't know. Am I missing any others that people would be like,
that's
oh yeah,
all
I know
three
that
of
dude.
us for now, and what we're really
That's
doing,
awesome.
It's a solid
what we're doing
crew.
I love Michal and Cam, and they bring their own strengths to the table. Michal we have here really because we need somebody who is one of the foremost Android experts on the planet, and Michal's so great at explaining those technical concepts and esoterica to people. Because we build an operating system based on AOSP. Those insights are important to us just from a company standpoint, right? We need to know about this operating system and what Google is building. The other side of that is just showing our customers that, hey, we are using what Android has to offer and that probably you wouldn't find at our competitors. So that's part of why Michal is here. Cam is here. He's running our newsletter, which you should sign up for. I'm not going to plug it here, but you can look it up. It's going to have an exclusive column by Michal every week, and that will contain some really inside baseball Android stuff. And then we're also just really focusing on teaching people about this world, like I said, of these unseen Android devices, and that helps raise our profile, obviously, but it's also just interesting. I think for all of us, the more we learn about this kind of stuff, the more we're like, that's a really cool story to tell. Like our platform, I'll get on my soapbox for one more second here. We're on first responder handsets that are basically walkie-talkies that work over LTE. We're on industrial forklifts in warehouses. We're on buses that take kids to school. We're on a home COPD care device. We are on a Peloton Compete exercise bike based, not a actual Peloton product, but one that competes with Peloton, I should say. And then we're on a bunch of other stuff too. Like it gets weirder. Like I can keep going, but that's what's cool about being here is we get to tell these stories about these devices where it's like I would never have even thought about like telling a story about a tablet that helps bus drivers and parents keep track of their children when they're getting dropped off on the bus route, because apparently it happens frequently enough that kids get left on the bus and end up at the bus depot at the end of the day.
Oh no, there's always a story here in New York City every couple of months or so about a kid who fell asleep on the bus and they didn't check it, and for whatever, it's horrible.
I've seen that episode of Hey Arnold.
Yeah.
Well, right on. Thank you for doing the walkthrough on that. That definitely gives me a better idea of what you guys are up to at Esper. And I should also just mention, I linked to it in the doc, but Michal, I think last week, did what he calls an Android 12L deep dive. We talked about Android 12L on the show in the last month. It's basically the next version of Android 12 focused on foldables and larger screen devices. And I mean, this is just prime example of Michelle's strength, right? Like, I mean, just so incredibly detailed, walking through all of the things that we know about Android 12L and what it's going to be used for, and the APIs and all that stuff. So, really cool to see that depth of coverage being produced through what you guys are doing. So I'm excited to follow along and see where you are headed. I'm really excited for you guys. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Big deal. Cool. Well, so thank you for that, David. We're going to get into the other news right now. Ron, you got it.
All right. So very exciting. We do love distribution numbers whenever we get the chance to talk about them. It's always
we
exciting.
never get them anymore.
I know, and few and far between. But so Google has given us some updated numbers, and these all came from inside Android Studio. Android 11 is currently on 24.2% of all devices, and it's been 14 months since release. Android 10 is on 26.5% of the devices. It's just barely ahead of Android 11. Android 9 is at 18.2%. Android 8 is at 13.7%. Android 7 is at 6.3%. And Android 4, also known affectionately as Jelly Bean, is holding on strong at 0.6%. And, this is likely to be the only distribution update we're going to see all year for the rest of the year, and who knows for how much longer. But the question is whether or not these distro numbers mean anything to average users or to anything, or just fodder for the developers, marketing, for developers, or for the marketing blitzes as Apple to attack us. Or anybody else to attack us. But I always find these really interesting to see how the rollout goes and to see how what the distribution does look like. I do think that it says more about the existence of legacy devices running older OSs as much as it says how great the recent Android rollout of newer versions has become. Because if you remember, Jason, remember years ago how long it took to get to 25% of the distribution, right? And you really got to wonder, how whether if Android 12 will get a faster pickup over the same time period because there's such a dramatic change in the update material U and all that sort of stuff. David, what do you think in terms of the Esper point of view, right? How important are these distribution numbers, and are they anything just more than just kind of fun chit chat for us on shows like this?
I think that they're still very relevant because they still paint the picture at the end of the day of what the ecosystem looks like. And the ecosystem still looks like a version 2 behind the current one is the most popular, which is just true. You can't really dispute that. So I think that Google has made strides in terms of adoption, but clearly, I think we could throw COVID under the bus a little bit for maybe some of this at least, and say maybe some low end and cheaper phones probably got triaged, out of support a little bit. But I think it's going to be an uphill battle for years to come.
Yeah, we're always on this end of the release wondering, the latest version of Android just came out. Is it going to be better this time around? And yeah, I think you're right, David. Like, it's obviously Google has improved things, but these numbers will probably never, well, maybe never is too strong of a word, but are highly unlikely to ever be at a point where we look at it, we're like, wow, this version of the last version of Android came out, a year ago, and we're at 65%. Like, I don't know how we ever get to that point, considering just the vast number of devices out there.
It's the long tail. Yeah, there's so many devices that are still active and still checking in that are beyond the point of getting updated, which is really kind of fascinating to think about. Someone out there is running a device on Android 7 right now. right? And like whether it's a tablet or a phone or some other kind of device that's running something, a kiosk or something like that, who knows?
Yeah,
right?
very much so. That is exactly it. We see those old devices. We have devices on Jelly Bean that we support. Like, it's a thing. So that does happen in that world a lot. And I think that the other thing is you have really concerns at Google that are counterbalancing. And one concern at Google is they want to make sure Android and apps are really extensible across platform versions. They want to make sure that your app doesn't break because it's running on an older phone. So they've started unbundling things like, the Play Services libraries and things like that, just to modularize the platform a little more and make the platform a little more long-lived effectively, even if you don't change Android versions. And then on the other side, you also have, Google trying to make the OS itself easier to update. And those kind of, they pull at each other a little bit just by their nature. So it's an interesting dance, but Google really does have to go both directions there.
Yeah, indeed. So that's interesting. But we're not done with numbers, not quite yet. Apparently, according to Counterpoint Research, Wear OS had a surge in the last quarter, thanks to no small part, I believe, to the Galaxy Watch 4, Samsung's latest wearable that came out a few months ago. Wear OS is up to 17% of smartwatch shipments in Q3. This is up from only 4% the previous quarter. That's a pretty big jump in one quarter anyways. Galaxy Watch 4 accounted for nearly 60% of smartwatch shipments in Q3. That's North America and Europe. And that's including, any of the smartwatches, coming out of Apple. I think there was a delay on the Apple Watch, so that's probably, part of these numbers. But Samsung did overtake Huawei, which was second for most shipments behind Apple from the previous quarter. So now Samsung is ahead. Watch 4, apparently a big deal for Samsung. It's done well enough to make an impact on these numbers anyways. But what does this say about the Wear 3.0? Because I think at this point, in the last few years, we've gotten so used to, talk about throwing things under the bus. Where as a whole, Wear OS has been thrown under the bus many, many times for not just not performing, for not doing what it should as a wearable, and for not really selling, for not moving devices. Is this a good sign for where we're at with Wear right now, or is it just a good sign that for Samsung's latest wearable? What do you think, David?
I think that the tail is wagging the dog here, which is Google cut a deal with Samsung. It's going great for Google. We'll see how it goes for Samsung a year from now when, customers weigh in and whether or not they like the product. That's really where we're going to find, I think, the proof here is in the long-term reception of this product and how it upgrades and, what features Google and Samsung can add. Because there's no doubt in my mind that Samsung is still nowhere near on the level with Apple for a wearable experience, and Wear OS isn't there either. That's I think that arguing otherwise is difficult to even kind of entertain. It's the market is very clearly skewed in Apple's favor still. So I think that this is good for Wear OS in terms of business motive for Google. Google has skin in the game now. They could lose Samsung. They have to keep them. So I think that they're very motivated. I think that's good. Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit of proof. I mean, if the numbers have increased, that much in that period of time, that says something. I think the longevity of any sort of progress is the real question. You can have little wins and little hits here and there, but can you keep that consistent to consistently prove that Wear OS or Wear 3, whatever you want to call it, is going to actually move the needle for wearables? And like you said, it's just too early to know that.
And right there is the sound of Jason being skeptical about Wear OS and Google's future with wearables. And I don't blame you, Jason, because if we have anything, we see how many stop-starts do we see from Google, not just in wearables, but just in across the board with different products and things like that. And this might be the latest scheme. And David, you're right. They need to keep Samsung happy, but Samsung's already proven that they don't need Google to do this stuff. So
right. I think that Samsung is taking a really calculated risk here, which is that Google is a technological partner they can stand on the shoulders of. Probably, I would guess most of that's related to Assistant and smartphone data integration more than anything. Samsung understands the value of that to consumers, especially in the North America and European markets. So I think the other thing to remember is that the overwhelming majority of people buying these Samsung smartwatches have no idea that Samsung has changed wearable platforms. They don't know. No. They don't care.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's really the second generation, Jason, like you said, that's going to be where we'll see. Like if people decide to keep going with that, or if Wear OS becomes a negative connotation with Samsung's wearables, that's going to be where we really start to get some insight there.
Yeah, curious to find that out myself. All right, let's take a break and thank the sponsor, and then we will get back and talk about some actual hardware news. But first, this episode of All About Android is brought to you, actually a new sponsor, BetterHelp. This is a great month. Personally, this is a great month for us to have BetterHelp on the network. The stuff on my face is all around a Movember fundraise, which was really pointing attention to mental health. And that's really what BetterHelp is all about. Is something preventing you from, achieving your goals or interfering with your happiness. That's mental health right there. That's when things get in the way, and you can check out betterhelp.com/Android to find some ways around that. I've been using actually BetterHelp for a couple of weeks now, and it was just a really cool process onboarding into the system, kind of walking through, a really easy Q&A system to kind of say, all right, well, what are the things that I'm lacking right now? What are the things that I'm looking forward to? Go through this whole process, paired up with a therapist, and then, ultimately meeting with that therapist on a weekly basis, video calls, which we're all very familiar with and used to. You can do it, through audio only, or you can do it with video. It's just a really cool approach to therapy that really embraces where we're at right now with our comfort level on using video for so many things that maybe we didn't think to use before. Now you can get your therapy through video chat as well. BetterHelp will assess your needs, will match you with your own licensed professional therapist, connect in a safe and private online environment. It's so convenient, you can actually start communicating in under 48 hours. And that's what it was for me. Like I signed up, I got paired up with a therapist, and boom, a few days later, we were on a call. It is not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online. And that's really important. You actually have the ability to send a message to your counselor anytime. You're going to get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, like I said, all without ever having to sit in a waiting room or something, or actually have to leave the comfort of your home. Some people might feel even more comfortable doing this sort of work from the comfort of their home. So that's another benefit. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. If you start up with a counselor and you're like, you know what? This person's just not for me. I need to find someone who I really connect with, who I really feel like I can be open with. You can do that. It's super easy. You can just change and boom, they'll pair you up with somebody else. And, hopefully, ultimately, you end up finding the match that's right for you. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is also available. The service is available for clients worldwide, and you can find the particular expertise that you need online. You don't want to limit yourself to the counselors who are only located near you. You're talking worldwide here, and you're going to find licensed professional counselors who are specialized in all sorts of aspects of your mental health: depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, trauma, anger, grief, self-esteem, LGBT matters. I mean, you name it, you're going to find a counselor here who can walk through whatever you're experiencing with you. Anything you share is, of course, confidential. That's incredibly important. It's convenient, professional, and affordable. And you can actually check out the testimonials posted daily on their site. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. I want to live a happier life. I want you to start living a happier life today as well. As a listener, you're going to get 10% off your first month by visiting our sponsor at betterhelp.com/Android. And you can join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, help, betterhelp.com/Android. And we thank BetterHelp for their support. And welcome to All About Android. BetterHelp, it's great to have you on board. All right, let's jump into hardware.
So before we get into the first story of hardware, David, I apologize. We were so remiss. We got so caught up in Esper and talking about all that great stuff. We forgot to, what phone are you using as your daily driver these days?
Right now, Pixel 6 Pro.
Right.
I am using that primarily, and I also do have an iPhone 13 Pro Max. I do use both of them, though.
Hey, no judgment. It's okay. Well, I feel like we were just coming down off the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro kind of high. I know, Jason, we've talked about it every week since the rollout. It's almost been a month now, which means that the clock was set just about time to start leaking news of the 6A. Which honestly I thought was a little sooner than I thought would happen. But so apparently via OnLeaks, we got our first glimpse of some leaks of the Pixel 6A. New renders show the familiar Pixel 6 design, complete with the camera bar on the back, which I'm glad they're keeping that design, kind of paradigm. It's the first A series phone to not feature a headphone port. So all my friends and competitors, and especially Matteo, who's laughing now, no Courage port on the Pixel 6A anymore, which is, kind of a huge development. 9 to 5 Google's APK Insight team say that the camera system will not be taken from the Pixel 6 the way A-series phones have done in the past. Instead, the main camera will be the same Sony IMX 363 shooter seen in all Pixels from the 3 to the 5A. Also a 12 megapixel IMX 386 sensor, likely the ultra wide. Same selfie cam as the Pixel 6. And finally, and this is almost the piece de resistance with all of this, the Pixel 6a will have Google's Tensor chip inside, which is the same chip running on the Pixel 6, which makes the 6a, I think it's pretty formidable. I'm curious to see what the price point is going to be. What do we think of the 6A? Do we think that these leaks are real? Do you think these are believable? And does it sound like this is what the 6A is going to become?
Impossible to know if it's real, but it sounds. I think what I find interesting here is that the A series previously has been same great camera, step down in processor, and now what we're seeing is same great processor, step down in camera. Although the step down in camera is really a step down to the camera that has reigned supreme in Pixels for the last 3 years, and people have been pretty darn happy with it. So I don't know how much of a step down it really is. Yes, that lens, it's been around a really long time, but it's still a good lens. It produces great photos. So I don't know, maybe it's the best of both worlds. What do you think, David?
I think the silicon choice is actually a cost-saving thing for Google more than anyone.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just easier to support one board, right? It's what Apple tends to do as well. So I think from that sense, from that standpoint, that makes sense. I think probably also that may just be a kind of a weird artifact of the way Qualcomm prices its chips and licensing and stuff, whereas now Google is working with Samsung as a fab directly, which is a different kind of relationship. So it may just make a lot more economic sense for Google on all fronts to just use the same chip. Easier to support, probably gets them more favorable terms with Samsung, because guess which version of the phone is going to sell the most units? It's going to be this one. And I think that is, a great way to package it. And then I think the camera is a business decision. The BOM for these sensors like that Google's using on the 6 and 6 Pro, I don't think it's anything exorbitant. I think this is Google gating features a little bit, and just like Apple does, and saying, hey, you want the really good camera experience, you have to step up. That's the way we're doing this now. And to me, that makes a lot more sense. It's really difficult to segment consumer experience based on chipset in a way that's going to make sense to a layperson. Like it's very, very hard.
Is a person really going to know the difference or care? Yeah. No,
right.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Camera's way simpler. It is immediately you get fewer cameras and they're not as good, and everybody understands what that means.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if they had kept, like, it makes a lot of sense to me that they would still have their processor in the new device because, you know, Google has really made a lot of hay around how amazing their processor is. It would be kind of strange to me if they came out with the A series and said, oh, but the A series, we're still going to use a Snapdragon. It's going to be a lesser Snapdragon, but this is where you get our chip. Like, I see Google being like, no, this is our chip, and we're going, you know, we're spreading our chip anywhere that we possibly can within our device category. But if they were to keep their chip and keep the same cameras as you have on, say, the 6, what would be the differentiator between a 6A and a 6 then? Because those are the two primary things. Would it just be a smaller device? Is that kind of it?
You'd have to start cutting in weird ways that would be difficult to relay to consumers. So you could, storage can be one. The quality of storage can be one. You can make the storage slower. You can use a lower bin of display panel. You can go back down to 60 hertz refresh. You could go down to 1080p. There are probably few other things you could do. You go to a cheaper capacitive fingerprint scanner. Does this one still have a capacitive? No, it looks like under display. I think that there are areas where you could cut, but enough to make a big enough price difference where the phone represents a good value without sacrificing on features too much. And that's harder to say. I don't really know.
Yeah, makes me realize if they had stuck with the hardware fingerprint sensor on the back, oh my goodness, this thing would be flying off the shelves because people hate their fingerprint sensors so much in the 6.
Yeah.
But they're not doing that as far as this leak is concerned anyways. So, well, I mean, the A series is usually a pretty darn successful series of Pixels. It's usually, it's safe to say it's their most successful kind of tangent or variant of their releases, right?
It's the mid range. I mean, it opened the door to the $349 price point on the 4A, and what is it, $399 on the 5A with 5G. It opens the door to a whole customer base that isn't looking for the $1,000 flagship. And even with the Pixel 6 being such an attractive price. The 6 Pro, of course, obviously being more expensive, but the Pixel 6 being, not completely breaking the bank. There's still a bunch of people who are like, oh, that's too much money for me. And I don't need all the fancy bells and whistles. I don't need the glass. I don't need all that, whatever it might be. I've been using the 4A now for, a while, and I love it. It's a great phone. It's solid. And when I dropped it on the pavement and broke it, it was easy to buy another one, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I love that Google is committed to having a mid-range entry, because it just opens up the customer base that much wider.
I think it's a really effective grassroots marketing tool for them. I think people sing the praises of those A series phones, and that's, how many people are saying that about, an entry-level iPhone these days? Nobody's really thinking about that. So it's a good conversation they've generated for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it continues on. We're guilty of that, but we just liked it. We have liked the A series. It's been a legitimately good series of devices to live with and to use. So, and then there is an entirely different focus of smartphone. That is the Fairphone, which we've talked about many times on the show. The Fairphone 2, step back in your time machine, released back in 2015. It's been out for a while. It's receiving a major Android OS update now 6 years later. That's pretty significant. Fairphone 2 getting Android 10 beta. Sure, it's not Android 12 or it's not Android 11, but it's still 6 years on, and the company is bringing an official OS update to it, expected to be released publicly early 2022. And, Fairphone, of course, just as a company, as a device effort, is really all about sustainability, stretching that hardware in ways that other manufacturers just really don't care much to do. And so obviously, this is an older device. It has older components inside. The chipset is a Snapdragon 801. If you remember us talking about that years ago, 2 gigs of RAM. A lot of these stats are dated. It launched with Android 5.1 Lollipop. That's how, long ago it was. But I think at that time, Android 5.1 was still an older OS, because Fairphone, it was also kind of creating a device that isn't insanely expensive in the process. So this seems to make Fairphone 2 one of the only Android phones releasing major OS updates this long after release, which is in some ways, I guess, closing the iPhone update gap, sort of, kind of, not really, but big props to the company for dedicating themselves to doing this. I guess they worked with the community to make it happen, but pretty cool stuff. What do you guys think?
I think that this is like the right message. It's the message everybody wants to hear, that we're going to support phones longer, that we're going to make them more useful for a longer period. Now, the devil's in the details, right? The way Fairphone has done this is to extend the life of the phone beyond the support lifetime Qualcomm offered for that chipset to any customer. And what that means is that Qualcomm's not making drivers for this chipset anymore. They're not supporting it with security patches. So what you're doing there, what you're introducing are potential breakages, because Fairphone is having to, I don't want to say hack together updates, but they're going to have to make assumptions, and they're going to have to use things in, pieces of, like the software and firmware that maybe, eventually could start introducing breakage. It's not like a true official support from the vendor of the silicon. So it's not truly apples to apples versus Google and Samsung.
Yeah, and Google's been, upping the ante. Samsung have been, it kind of seems like they're on this race together, which, ultimately, like you said, sends a message to the industry. So it's a good effort. I mean, I think it's really important to do that. Where I get confused is like if all Android phone manufacturers, felt the pressure to support, and this would never happen. I don't believe that this would ever happen. But if they all felt the pressure to support for 5 years, let's say, their devices because Google and Samsung set the precedent, like what would that mean for the hardware that was aging at 2 years anyways? Like, I just don't even know. Like, that creates a whole mess in and of itself. It's just a different story in Android world when compared, to iPhone, which is what a lot of people like to do when it comes to this update thing.
Right. And yet it's not, it's not apples to apples. So,
no,
sorry, David.
not at all.
After you.
The other side is, there's obviously there's business that has to be considered here, which is the business of selling a phone every 2 to 3 years. And,
of course.
The likes of Qualcomm and MediaTek, having their business interests align with that too. Not to say there's anything nefarious about that, but that's how the business works. If smartphone companies came to Qualcomm and said, we want 5 years of support, Qualcomm would probably say, okay, how are you going to make that worth our while? There has to be some exchange there. So, don't blame Qualcomm, don't blame the OEMs. It goes both ways.
Yeah, really good point. Really good point. All right, Ron, you got the next one.
Hate the game, don't hate the players.
Yes.
Right. Something like that. Some variation of that. I don't know.
Something like that.
All right. Well, talking a lot about Samsung and Google and all this sort of stuff. Let's not forget Motorola. Our good friends at Motorola launched the new Moto Watch 100. But, it's not running Wear OS at all. It's a mid-range wearable with a 1.3-inch LCD, 42-millimeter aluminum case, 355 milliamp battery that lasts up to 2 weeks. That's some awesome battery life right there. And it's running the Moto Watch OS, so not Wear OS. And it has, quote, functionality you need without the battery draining apps you don't, which I feel is just like dripping with subtext there. And best of all, there's no flat tire, which is great to see on a wearable whenever you can get it.
Can't talk about a Moto Watch without the flat tire.
Exactly.
I can't anyways.
I know. I'm glad
they will
Moto
forever
can
get
now.
that from me.
Yeah. But But yeah, I mean, again, the whole wearable market I don't know. I mean, I suppose there's a market for this, right? I suppose a mid-range, affordable, wearable watch is something, wearable, device is something that people are looking for. Obviously, Motorola must feel there's market fit for it, or they wouldn't take the time to develop a OS for it and the product and all that sort of stuff. But again, $100 price tag, that's a nice price tag. But again,
that's pretty inexpensive.
Yeah.
That's pretty inexpensive.
And I mean, that's kind of, in the zone where all of these Asian market targeted wearables are at, like, between $50 and $100. It's a really huge segment in Asia. And I think that, it speaks to the fact that if you have an Android phone, you can't make an Apple Watch fit in your life unless you have an iPhone, which is not an option for most people. So there is, I still think there's incredible pent up demand for wearables on the Android side. And that's why you see companies, dipping back in, because they figure, there's clearly money here. People want these things. So, it's interesting. I think that's why we've watched this market continue to kind of, writhe in agony for the last few years and just kind of keep going. Not to put too fine a point on it, but that's how I look at it.
Well. Yeah, illustrated well. Why would a company like Motorola choose to do its own OS on a wearable like this $100 watch instead of going with like Wear 3.0?
I would be really curious to hear where Motorola's OS is coming from.
Yeah, I'm curious too.
I would like to. I haven't read about this one, so
I mean, and what's interesting, I think, is that comment that is, it's like all, the quote from there, which is the functionality you need without the battery draining apps you don't. And they're pushing the 2 weeks battery life. They're pushing, so my guess is that it's got to be running. If it's not Wear OS, whether or not it's custom or or some flavor of Android that they've adapted or something like that to do it, but they've pared it down to do just what it is being presented to do and not do everything under the sun. Makes sense. I could see that argument. I could see that product person saying that let's make a really lean, tight OS that will optimize the battery life. That I could see that argument, that conversation happening. So.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, I can also see there being a lot of really accessible and cheap off-the-shelf solutions in Shenzhen that you can just license, which is what this might be.
Well, yeah, I was just about to point out. So you remember a couple of years ago, the Moto 360 got a re-release, and it was through a company called eBuyNow. That created that version, and it looks like they're creating this too. So, yeah, I think you put your finger on it right there, David. Probably buying some pretty easy parts to release a device that costs only $100. Who knows? Maybe it's great for $100. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure all the Moto heads are excited about this. I'm sure the Motorola fan boards are lighting up. There's a Motorola fan Discord somewhere with the
Motorola subreddit.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting all sorts of thumbs up.
Moto Twitter is just going crazy for this right now. I'm pretty sure. So
even thinking about my old Droid Bionic, I get heart palpitations.
Right? See, there you go.
Oh boy,
see, David's showing his true colors right there. He's a Moto head. You see, there we go. All right. With all that great hardware, let's take a break and thank our next sponsor. This episode of All About Android is brought to you by Userway.org. Listen, Userway is amazing and has a vision that I, as a app developer and business person and all that stuff, I really connect with. Every website without exception needs to be accessible because it's a public entity and, frankly, because it's the right thing to do. It's a federal ADA law that mandates equal access to services for all Americans. You could be liable if your website does not meet ADA laws for accessibility. Userway has an incredible AI-powered solution that tirelessly enforces the hundreds of WCAG guidelines. With just one line of JavaScript, Userway can achieve more than an entire team of developers, which is amazing. Userway's AI and machine learning solutions power accessibility for over 1 million websites trusted by Coca-Cola, Disney, eBay, FedEx, and many other leading brands. And now Userway is making its best-in-class enterprise-level accessibility tools available to small and medium businesses. When you scale, you need Userway. An accessible and compliant website isn't the only right thing to do. It also makes business sense. The Achilles heel for websites are registration forms, nav menus, and shopping carts that are not accessible. Millions of people will require Userway just to purchase your products. For years, Userway has been on the cutting edge, creating innovative accessibility technologies that push the envelope of what's possible with AI, machine learning, and computer vision. Userway's AI automatically fixes violations at the code level. And here are some of the amazing things that Userway does. It auto-generates image alts. It writes image descriptions for you, remediates complex nav menus and ensures that all pop-ups are accessible, fixes vague link violations and fixes any broken links, ensures your website makes use of accessible colors while remaining true to your brand, gives you a detailed report for all the violations that were fixed on your website, and the best of all, Userway is platform agnostic. So whether you're running WordPress, Shopify, or Wix, Userway is cost-effective and easy to add. And the same goes for AEM, Sitecore, or SharePoint. Userway integrates seamlessly with them all. Let Userway help your business meet its compliance goals and improve your experience for your users. Check out their free scanning tool to see if your website is ADA compliant. In fact, the voice of Siri, who's considered the world's most popular voice assistant, has a message about Userway.
Userway is trusted by more than 1 million websites and 60 million users with disabilities. Visit userway.org to learn how one line of code can make your website accessible.
Userway can make any website fully accessible and ADA compliant. With Userway, everyone who visits your site can browse seamlessly and customize it to fit their needs. It's also a perfect way to showcase your brand's commitment to millions of people with disabilities. Go to userway.org/twit and get 30% off Userway's AI-powered accessibility solution. Userway, making the internet accessible for everyone. Visit userway.org/twit today. And we thank Userway for making the internet more accessible and being awesome, and most importantly, sponsoring this episode. Thanks, Userway.
Thank you, Userway. All right. And with that, it's time for some apps. The green bubble gap. Is it a thing? Does it exist?
Yes.
Apparently, it's getting just a tiny little smidgen smaller with a change that's coming to Android messages. Apparently, I think 9 to 5 Google or Android Police, I can't remember which, saw this coming, and now it's appearing in Android Messages beta. It's going to convert those so-and-so liked your message texts. So if someone's on an iPhone and you send them a message and then they hit their like button in iMessage, you know, which would be like a thumbs up or a heart or something like that. If you're also on iMessage, you would actually get the emoji response into that, attached to that message. If you're on Android, what you get is like a carbon copy of the message you just sent, but before it says so-and-so liked, and then quotes, or something along those lines. So basically, Google has, kind of feels a little hacky, but whatever, works. They've built the functionality into Android Messages to analyze the message, see that it's coming from an iPhone and says, you know, so-and-so liked, whatever, and convert that into the actual emoji, attach it to the message. So at least you feel like you're playing in the same ballpark as your iMessage friend.
So not only when this came out did I say, oh God, thank God, because these are the scourge of having any friends with iPhones, but it then made me go, why did it take this long? Like, if Google
seems like a pretty easy fix.
Right. If Google could do it now, why couldn't they do it previously and make things like, I don't know, infinitely better for users and take away a huge, like, negative thing when it comes to comparing iPhone and Android? Like, why did it take till 2021 to make this happen?
Because
why do you think, David?
I think that there are pretty good reasons for that. Number one is, like, they're all but saying we're taking RCS to a nice farm upstate. It's going to run around. It's going to have so much fun with all the other messaging protocols. This is Google admitting we're never going to win this. We can just make it less bad. And that's really what this is. This is probably also an olive branch to Apple to be like, hey, can we do something maybe? Apple's never going to do anything about that.
Well, what's interesting though is that to your point though, that if this is Google conceding that they're never going to win, but they're doing something that's better for users, isn't that a win for us?
Yes. I think
Right.
so. I think that, everybody still wants RCS to be the holy grail of we can make it all work together now, but I think that's silly, and the competing business interests are far too strong for that to ever work out, I think.
So it sounds like you are of the opinion that there is small likelihood that Apple will ever go, maybe we should support RCS. Like, I still hold out hope. I'm not very optimistic, but I still hold out hope that at some point RCS there might be enough support or enough interest, or I don't know, longing for this to happen, that Apple at some point feels like, all right, maybe we should. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, and whatever, let's just do it. Crossing my fingers.
I mean, it comes down to the business opportunity for Apple, right? Which is that as long as they can keep this wall up, it's a reason to drive iPhone sales. And then also Apple preserves its business opportunities in the future for anything it might want to monetize, in messages. So true. Arrgh. Oh, well, at least things are a little better in the meantime.
I mean, if it's not user hostile anymore, so I call that a win. I don't know.
I do wonder if there's going to be a time in the future where Apple's like, all right, well, if they've created a system, let's change our system so that it does.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
that would be a very Apple thing to do.
It totally would. Totally would. All right, Ron, you got the next one.
Oh man, yeah. And we just can't stop talking about Pixel 6s, by the way.
No, there's a lot in this episode. For fair warning in the emails.
It's just life. I mean, it's our new life. But there's a whole host of new capabilities that are on their way to the Pixels at a glance widget, which I know a lot of people have opinions of. According to a 9 to 5 Google APK Insight Teardown, they're just doing those all the time. It includes when you're at a store, shopping lists and Google Pay rewards cards when you're in supported stores, which is neat. Contextual, I like that. Bedtime, your upcoming bedtime from the Clock app, treating us all like children. Connected devices, connection status and battery info for your Bluetooth devices, which is handy. Doorbell shows who's at the door when your doorbell rings, and I assume that requires a connected doorbell, right?
Yeah, I would hope so.
Fitness, yeah, or just if it doesn't, then we're burying the lead.
We've figured out how to determine who's at your door. Yes, that would be burying the lead, absolutely.
Yeah. Fitness gives you activity info from your fitness app. Flashlight gives you a reminder when the flashlight is on. And I'm going to do a quick side note here, by the way. The power went out here on Sunday. There was at like 6:30 a.m. I heard an explosion, and I guess there was one of the circuit breakers or something like that on the telephone pole in my neighborhood was down, and so we had no power from like 6:30 until like 10:30 a.m. And our local energy company, PSEG, they have an app. Which I have the app just to pay my bill. And when I saw that there was an outage, I went to report the outage, right? And then it shows me on a map the affected area, and it was literally my block, right? And what was neat is that on the outage screen, there was a button to turn on the flashlight, which I was like, whatever app developer at the power company had a really good idea that, like, if someone is reporting an outage, there's a good chance they don't have lights. Let's make it easy to turn on the flashlight. Like,
that's a great idea.
One of the funniest things I've heard all week, honestly.
I was really impressed. I mean, it was 7 a.m. I didn't need the flashlight, but there it was. And so that was
there.
Cool.
It was in case you needed it.
Anyway, so another at a glance widget is going to add safety check, which is the safety check countdown for the personal safety app, which we've talked about recently, and timer and stopwatch, which will give you your timer and stopwatch info from the Clock app. So that at a glance widget is just, its tendrils are going into more and more applications on the phone, making it even more handy. So I think it's pretty cool. I don't know.
I think the flashlight one, the reminder when flashlight is on, at first I was like, what? But then I realized,
why would you need a reminder of it?
Well, but this literally happened to me a couple of days ago, where I turn on the flashlight on my phone to use it to look somewhere, and then I set my phone down like this, so the flashlight's on the table, shining underneath, but it's covered by the table. So I had no idea that the flashlight was on until later when I picked up the phone and my phone was hot, of course, and the light was on. I was like, oh, I forgot to turn that off. So I'd been burning battery or whatever. So, the idea here is if it's facing up, you'd see the at a glance widget and it would say, oh, your flashlight's on. So at least you have some indication. Anyways.
It's interesting.
I mean, your phone should have a global setting that just makes it like flash in front of you if the flashlight is on for more than like 15 seconds, because it is mortifying, especially if you're using the phone and then you're in a public place and you realize my flashlight's on. I look like an idiot. This is something your phone should very proactively be alerting you to, like high likelihood of public embarrassment. Please let me know. But I think this widget is great. I have always loved Google, from the days of the Google Now pane, when it would show you your packages and everything. I love proactive displays of information like this, and I love this widget overall. So to me, my only problem with it is there aren't enough contexts where it does something. So this is great.
Yeah, love to see it being built out. I totally agree. It really reminds me of the magic of Google Now that we lost so long ago. And I never really understood how we lost all of that contextual stuff that was, interlaced, between your calendar information and all this other, stuff. Google Now used to be so incredibly useful, and I used to use it all the time. And then, of course, they changed it, and they kind of removed a lot of that immediacy of it to be like, oh, wow, that's coming up. Okay. And so then I stopped using it. This feels like a reintroduction of some of that. And not only that, it's on the front screen. So it's something that I'm almost guaranteed to see throughout the day. So, yeah, I agree. I like the at-a-glance widget. Although I was reading an article, I can't remember which publication. It may have actually been Android Police, from someone writing about wanting to have the ability to remove it entirely. Like, yes, I can turn it off, but then it's still a clock widget, and I want that widget gone. So, it does have its haters, but I'm not one of them.
Sounds like a bad opinion to me.
Opinions are like, I won't finish that. Let's see here. DuckDuckGo has a new beta feature in the Android app that attempts to mimic, at least to a certain degree, the app tracking protection that Apple had implemented and talked about earlier this year. If you go into the settings of DuckDuckGo, you'll find that you can opt into the waitlist for the feature. So it's not something that you can activate the beta on immediately. You have to join the waitlist and then wait. It asks you, do you want to get notified when you are invited in? Great. So I've done that. I'm curious to see how this works. But Wired author Matt Burgess installed 36 apps on a fresh, out-of-the-box Pixel 6, logged into some of those apps, and then left the phone alone, but powered up and, on for 4 days. During that time, apparently 23 apps made 630 tracking attempts, according to DuckDuckGo's new feature. Even more when he was actively using the phone, obviously, using the device and all those apps in question and interacting with those apps and everything. Apparently, it doesn't block all trackers and all apps right now. Browsers aren't included. Games apparently are given a pass because some games simply won't work without trackers activated. So that's just, the onus is on you to, I suppose, look into the games that you're installing. I'm sure those things will, kind of iron out and broaden out as DuckDuckGo works on this as it goes along, but it does include a whitelist feature so that you can, throw apps in there that you don't want it to block. But interesting, if Google's not doing this, I can't remember if Google has plans to do this at some point or not. I've lost track of that, but DuckDuckGo going on its own to provide this, and yeah, I like DuckDuckGo. I like what they're doing with that app.
Yeah.
So
neat.
Could be useful, I suppose.
Sure.
Sure. Maybe not. Maybe not useful at all. Sounds like that might actually be the case. Okay. All right.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I like, this is neat. I don't know. I don't know. I fall back. I mean, this kind of applies to the privacy stuff and stuff like that. They can track me on Android. I'm not that interesting. There's not, I don't know. I don't think. I don't know. I just don't think the stuff that they're tracking of me is of terrible interest, so I don't worry about it too much. But yeah. Maybe that's ignorant.
Burke's foil hat is very happy. So take that what you will. He just said that in chat. Sure. All right, coming up, we've got your email up next. AAA@twit.tv, 347-SHOW-AAA. We can also subtitle this email block the Fixel My Pixel Sixel block, because all three of these emails have something to do with that. So, Ron, you got the first one.
Fixel My Pixel Sixel. That's fantastic right there. Matt Murphy writes in and says, I recently switched from a OnePlus 7 Pro to a Pixel 6 Pro and seem to be having an issue with the fingerprint unlock. I'm used to the delay in the in-screen fingerprint reader coming from the OnePlus 7 Pro, but this isn't my issue. It seems to be when the phone is locked and I use my fingerprint to unlock it, I still have to put in my PIN code to unlock it, whereas I didn't have to do that on my OnePlus phone. Have you all had the same experience? And I have not. Jason, have you run into this, or David, have you run into this?
I've run a small handful of times where I go to use my fingerprint and it still asks me to use a PIN, but
if we're talking about periodically, that's a feature.
Yeah.
So there are a number of things that can trip that, from my understanding, but there is I think there's a timer as well, like the Android OS level, like you have to give your PIN after certain events. There could be other things that trigger it too in safety.
Smart lock.
Might have
something to do with it.
I would generally think it's a safety net thing or something to do with trust zone. I wonder if you're using a particular app or switching networks frequently or connecting to an external device of some kind. Those kind of state changes can trigger the OS asking for a PIN again. That is not an area I'm super familiar with, but I do know it's not just like a timer thing. You can do things on your phone, like try to enter your fingerprint too many times, that will force a PIN. So, it's like a behavior in Android.
Yeah, and also, some people might not be aware, when you reboot your phone, even though your fingerprint protected, when you reboot, you are forced to enter in the PIN. That is a security measure. That's interesting. I mean, I'm sure you're probably right, David. There's probably a number of different kind of like scenarios that Google has factored in to the security of the device to recognize, if this, then there is at least a certain percentage of possibility that is happening because someone's trying to break in the device or whatever the case may be, and it just makes more sense to protect with a PIN.
Or you're dead and they're trying to scan your finger. Dead men get no pins.
Right. Which let's hope that never happens, but it could. I mean, I was kind of poking around and found some Reddit, posts and some bug tracker posts on Google, and some of them made it sound like it was happening all the time. So I don't know if it's, I don't know if this is abnormal or maybe their scenario is abnormal. Yeah, that I have not experienced it happening all the time. Matt, I'm sorry, but some interesting questions to pose. Maybe someone else out there has an experience that they can share. AAA@twit.tv. Send it in. Let's see here. Sorry, the name is out of my screen. David. Not the David that's on the show. This is a different David.
Although it would be really interesting if David had written an email in and we were reading on the show while he was on the show. That'd be really interesting.
Why do you think I'm here?
I wanted to get my answer firsthand, you guys. No, something tells me David Ruddock doesn't need to email us with questions about Android. I think he's got it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. It's the other way around, I think, possibly. So.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. A different David, or so we believe, wrote in to say, following on from episode 551 and the phantom dialing comments on the Pixel 6 phones, to let you know, I've experienced this quite a lot in the past couple of weeks. However, I've tracked mine down not to the Google Assistant, which, by the way, this is what we kind of talked about last week. It was a story around phantom dialing on Pixel 6 devices. We were trying to figure out, like, why is this happening to some people? And we were guessing it had something to do with Assistant. David says the personal safety app. He says, when I got my 6 Pro a few weeks ago, I set up the car crash detection feature, set up an emergency contact, specifically my sister. I work nights here in the UK in quite a physical job, and I found that for some reason my phone was ringing my sister at all hours in the morning. During my working hours, I listened to a lot of podcasts, which is how I caught my phone ringing her number. Looking at my battery stats at one time, I noticed that the safety app used 20% battery, and then it clicked as to why the Pixel was only dialing my sister. I don't know if my constant moving is triggering the phone to dial, but I've had to turn off the feature to stop the phone auto-dialing her. I didn't get any message from Google saying if I don't respond, it'll dial the number, which is the way I thought it was supposed to work. I'm wondering if it's a bug or a faulty unit I have. Anyway, just thought I'd let you know, as the phone hasn't dialed anyone since I removed the emergency number. I wonder if that's it.
I mean,
fascinating.
Are you like a wrestling mat QA tester?
Yeah, I'm super curious.
What are you doing that's triggering that?
Super curious to know what that job is. That's so like vicious and so much movement that it's triggering that. Interesting. So I don't know if that's the solution for everybody, but it is interesting that you were able to pinpoint that. And I'm sure for at least a percentage of the people experiencing issues, that might be the solution. Worth checking into.
The personal safety app. So weird.
Yeah. Did you set that up when you got your Pixel, Ron?
No.
No?
Not the car crash detection feature in emergency No, I haven't done that yet. So
I set it up. I haven't had any auto calls, though.
I haven't moved over to the Pixel 6 yet. By the way, I'm still on the 4A just because like the time to back up all my WhatsApp messages and back up my SMS and then switch the SIM and with kids and life and some Thanksgiving weekend is my weekend. I'm going to lock myself here in the room and I'm going to do it. And maybe I'll set that up. Although, I'll set up my sister's phone number and we'll see what happens. But So. All right. Well, that said, comes in not only is it time for the email of the week, but it's also a celebrity email of the week. I feel like it's Jason. It's our first celebrity email of the week.
Yeah, this is
a
monumental moment.
I'm kind of now addicted because I kind of want to have celebrity emails of the week more often. But so this one comes from friend of the network, friend of the show, friend of all tech people out there, Jeff Jarvis, the great Jeff Jarvis, who writes in and says, the long and the short of it, my Pixel 6 will connect with my Mazda Android Auto unit, but apps will not launch on the car side. Android Auto on the car is working. I know that because my Pixel 3a XL still works fine. The cable and connection are working. I know that because 1, audio from the phone plays fine on the car, and 2, the car recognizes that Android Auto is there. The problem, clicking on the Android Auto command on the car does nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
And Jeff, thank you for coming to us with your Pixel problems. I mean, I'm honored, Jason. I just can't. I mean, like at this point, it's like, wow. Yeah. And I guess the good news is that you're not alone, Jeff. Right?
Yeah. Well, yes. And he had mentioned this. So he had tweeted about this late last week and sent me an email like, hell, do you know of anything? And it's like, I have not heard about this, but he linked me to some articles that show that apparently there are Pixel 6 owners who have Android Auto in their car and it's not playing nice. At least that's exactly what this article on T3.com says. But I don't have an Android Auto head unit. I can't test this. I don't know what's going on. I don't know, David or Ron. Ron, you have an Android Auto head unit.
I have an Android Auto, but in a Subaru, so it's not running the whole head unit. It's an option amongst the Starlink system or whatever. I have not plugged in the Pixel 6 to it yet. Once I get it set up this weekend, I'm going to run right out and do that immediately to see if I'm having the same problem.
I've been using it, and it is incredibly finicky on my Pixel 6 Pro on a number of cars I've tried it with now. So
really?
I think that... So what I've noticed is that it's very, very picky about the cable connection quality state, it seems like. Like if I jiggle the cable at all, like it disconnects very, very quickly. So I've noticed that on a few different cars now. And so something strange is going on there with the phone and Android Auto. I've also noticed it doesn't reliably launch. Sometimes it will launch, sometimes it won't. Sometimes it will randomly crash. There's clearly, I'm guessing this has to do with Android Auto's optimization for the new silicon. And that there is something going on there at the video decode or encode or whatever level that's causing some kind of issue here and breaking the connection or not initiating it or whatever it is. Because all Android Auto is really just a very basic comms protocol and then like H.264 video out. It's not super complicated.
I would believe that theory, David. Sorry to interrupt, but it's got to be the most complex to test.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. So it's got to be very difficult.
Yeah.
Because of the variety of different head units, is that why?
Right.
Yeah.
Just like so many different conditions, and the head unit in a lab versus the head unit in a car versus the head unit in a car that's moving versus the head unit in a car that's moving on a bumpy road, right? Like you got to think about all those race conditions that potentially could happen, especially if you're talking about finickiness within the connector and things like that. So yeah, I mean, and this has got to be the thing that they're probably didn't test all the way before release, and now they've because you're up against they're announcing on October 28th, come hell or high water. So you've got to, make the fixes post release, which is never fun. But
yeah, this sounds like probably something Google was aware of internally and couldn't triage in time for launch. I mean, this had to appear in testing with them.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess the question. So Jeff has the Mazda unit. He's saying clicking on the Android Auto command on the car does nothing at all. So then it's like, all right, well, so then, is that an issue with the car's integration with Android Auto, or is that an issue with the Pixel 6? Where does the fault lie and how does it get fixed? I don't know.
Yeah, because it seems like if you're tapping on Android Auto on the command on the car, it's got to be some sort of response not happening. So it's going out to the phone and not getting what is coming back. Now, why Android Auto in the head unit doesn't have an error message or something like that to kind of explain that, they probably, it's probably a new kind of condition or a new kind of situation, and maybe that doesn't exist. But does it require the head unit to be updated? Does it require?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, right. It's really interesting. It's I don't know.
That would, if it requires the head unit to be updated, that would be bad on Google's part for not designing around that. But I would suspect it's the phone. My tip to Jeff would be what I've noticed: if you flip the cable around and are very ginger with it, sometimes it will start running when it's not working. Like I've truly noticed there is something very strange going on with the establishing the handshake for the connection.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, there's okay, and that's good news. Like if it really is in Google's hand, hopefully that means they update. I guess you never really are truly certain about that, but I would imagine Google would address this.
And I'm also gonna when I get my Pixel 6 set up and go test it, I'll test it with my Android Auto wireless dongle to see if it hardwired versus wireless, whether or not there's any difference or anything like that. So that'll be interesting too. So. I will say this does remind me, and it has nothing to do with Android Auto, but David, you reminded me with finicky cables and things like that. Jason, I think I forgot to mention on the show a couple weeks ago, I had a thing I've never seen before happen on my Pixel 4a related to the cable. So I have my USB-C cable coming out of the power strip by my bedside, right? Like I plug my phone in overnight and just leave it there, and that way it's there in the morning, that sort of thing. And the other morning I was in my bedroom playing with my daughter. My daughter came with an Apple and plugged the Apple into the cable, or plugged the cable into the Apple, not a computer, an actual piece of fruit. A lovely golden delicious apple, where she just plugged the USB cable into the apple, and then laughed and then ran away. And then I took the apple and I went whatever. Then that night I plugged that cable in, forgetting about the Apple incident.
Oh no!
And got an error message on the phone. Alert: USB cable is wet or damaged. USB USB connector is disabled until it dries. like it detected the moisture
that's smart.
From the Apple and disabled the bottom connector on the phone. And then I got a hairdryer and I blew it and whatever, and then plugged it into another cable and it worked fine. That cable has since been rendered useless. That cable does not work anymore.
Done. That cable knows, like, you don't plug me into an Apple.
Sugar will destroy any electronics too.
Yeah,
it's not just like you should have like put it in water and then blown it out or something. That's like the only not good.
Yeah. So the phone is fine. The cable is dead. Also, I'm pissed because it was like one of those nice like 10-foot cable, like it was a long cable, and I'm like, damn it, now I need to go buy another one of those because now I have a short cable and it's like just barely getting to the top of the nightstand. But I thought, regardless of ruining the cable, I thought it was really interesting that there was a moisture detection and that it shut down the connector. Like that was really cool. So yeah,
that's smart. Yeah. Good. That's great.
So, not to take away from good friend Jeff Jarvis in the email of the week.
Which congratulations, Jeff. It really is an honor to be the email of the week, and you can put this right up there at the top of all of your accomplishments.
Congratulations, Jeff.
Congratulations, Jeff. Hopefully that's at all helpful. He's like, I'm never emailing you guys again. All right, we've reached the end of this episode of All About Android, and always awesome to get you on, David. Thank you so much for carving out some time to hanging out with us and talk Android. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to be on.
Yeah, right on. Cool. I'm happy that we get to continue to have you on, even though you're at a new place. So tell us anything you want people to know as far as following, the awesome work you're doing at Esper, follow you online. What do you want people to know?
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter. I'm RDRV3, and I talk about Esper and a whole host of things you aren't interested in as well. So really great opportunity. Also, Esper.io is our website. If you're interested in Android as a platform and, like potentially doing some cool custom stuff with it, that's a cool place to start. We offer some fun tools.
Right on. Cool. Esper.io. Thank you, David. We'll have you back soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Ron, what do you want to leave people with?
Yeah, so you can always, as I mention every week, you can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at RonXO. If you are looking for more podcast fun to listen to over the long Thanksgiving weekend this week in the States, head over to ifanboy.com. We just released last week our monthly Media Explode discussion where me and the guys over there are talking about what we've been watching and enjoying and things like that. I talked about the Sparks Brothers documentary, which Jason, I told you to watch. Which you did,
so
right?
good. It was good. I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for the recommendation.
I knew you would.
It was a blast.
I knew you would like it.
Totally love
as
it.
a musician, I knew you'd get it. But yeah, so talked about that. I also talked about Mike and Tom Eat Snacks, my favorite podcast, where Tom Cavanaugh and Michael Ian Black rate snacks. So it was a fun discussion. Then we talked about some of our favorite holiday viewing traditions. So head over to iFanboy. It's on the feed there. You can listen to it over there and enjoy and have a great holiday, everybody. So
right on. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Burke, at the studio, for pushing the fade button right there to fade from Ron to me. If you're watching the video, to fade back to Ron. See, this is Burke's magic right here. You're watching it in real time as I talk about it. Thank you, Burke, for your magic. Thank you to Anthony, who's editing this show after the fact. Victor is out this week. Have a happy Thanksgiving, Victor. And Anthony is filling in. So thank you, Anthony, for all of your work behind the scenes. Let's see here. Oh, I didn't put the link in here. That's okay. If you go to my Twitter profile at Jason Howell, you'll find a link pinned at the top of my profile. It's the last week of my Movember fundraise for men's health and mental health. It's why this stuff is growing on my face. My first time participating in it, and it's been really great. I'm super close to my goal. So go there, click on the pinned tweet if you want to donate a little bit to that. And I think I'm super close to the goal. So you guys are all awesome. Thank you so much. Were you going to say something, Ron?
No, I was going to say November 23rd, and I can finally see some results. Visually.
Here we are. Yes. And I started a week before the beginning of November because I knew like how slow this stuff grows on my face. So yeah, there you go. This is what I look like with little hairs on my face, apparently.
Wait, you're hiding it with the microphone.
Well, I'm just not used to it. I also don't need, we don't need to pay such close attention to my face. Let's talk about Club Twit. Club Twit is our ad-free subscription tier. All of our shows, no ads. Also an exclusive Twit Plus podcast feed. Tons of extra content. Like, for example, earlier before we started this show, we had a hearty discussion around Dune and the value of seeing movies like that in the movie theater and stuff. Probably going to throw that into the Twit Plus podcast feed. That way, if you don't catch the show live, you can still kind of enjoy the 5 or 10 minutes that we rattle on about stuff that's not related to Android. That's just one example. You get that in your own podcast feed. And then a members-only Discord, which has just been so much fun. People participating. We've got a book club, exclusive book club happening there. So much stuff. $7 per month. Just go to twit.tv/clubtwit. And you do that, and you can subscribe and check out all the awesomeness. That is it for this week's episode of All About Android. We love doing the show. We love that you guys are watching and listening each and every week. So thank you. Give a lot of thanks in this week of Thanksgiving. This Thursday here in the U.S., we have Thanksgiving. So we'll be giving a lot of thanks, and I thank you for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time on All About Android. Bye, everybody.
If you find yourself talking to those virtual assistants in your house quite often, or maybe you can make your light turn on and off with the touch of a button, well, Smart Tech Today is the show for you. Join Matthew Casanelli and myself, Micah Sargent, every week as we talk all about smart stuff and the fun that comes along with it.